Hey guys, I'm Tyler Grace. Today I am on the Modern Craftsman podcast with my co-host Nick Schiffer. It's just the two of us today. We start the podcast off with a little bit of coffee talk. How beautiful the weather is outside. I had to put a separate little buffer on my microphone because I have the windows open. I'm getting a nice breeze coming through.
Becoming old men, Tyler.
I know. But a bunch of people have been requesting of us, just the two of us hop on. We've had guests lined up, one right after another for so long now, and we had a last minute cancellation. Nick was looking to fill somebody in, as he always does, and I was like, you know what? Let's use this as an opportunity to kind of hop on. I guess Nick had something in mind that he wanted to talk about. I was looking to talk more so about dirt bikes and vacation and how nice the weather was, but Nick wanted to dig into some interesting stuff that he learned on his trip recently to Switzerland. So I personally enjoy these podcasts a lot. It's a little less formal. We don't have a guest that we have to kind of pull along and answer the questions and do the interviewing. So it's shoulders down, very informal. And we start digging into some things, and we really would like the help of you guys and girls via email, iTunes, whatever it may be. You'll hear at the end of this podcast, but we're enlisting the help of you guys to kind of help this industry as a whole. Some ideas that we have, and I think that pretty much sums it up. Right?
Amazing intro.
Yeah.
It's like you've done this before.
I think I have once or twice. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Obviously, follow up if you like this structure. We can try and work more of these in. It's been crazy lining people up and having guests on. And sometimes we kind of forget about going back to grassroots and doing what we first started doing. But I always feel like these are refreshing. I enjoy them. Hopefully you guys do. And you can let us know what you think.
We haven't done just you and I podcast in a long time.
Just the two of us. Is it recording? Yeah, it's recording.
Yeah, it's definitely recording.
I went to sit down and I was like, I had a coffee when I got home that I didn't drink today from this morning.
I heard you dropping ice in the cup.
Yeah, I couldn't find it, and it wound up being, I guess I ran upstairs and I must have still had my fan on, 'cause it's been nice out at night. So I had my fan on next to my bed, and I must have put it down next to that. So I was on the hunt for it.
Do you buy coffee, buy cans of coffee, or make it?
In the morning we make coffee, and then maybe 2 days a week I'll grab one while I'm out.
Yeah.
If I have to run errands.
But you don't buy the pre-made cold brew.
No, we have a adjusting my levels. We have a pour over that honestly we've tried a bunch. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's just boiling some water and dumping it over. Rachel typically makes it, but she had to go to New York today. So I made my own coffee today. Let's see how it is.
Woo!
Yeah, it's pretty good. Now, and then every now and then she'll grab, do you know what's pretty good? They have a concentrate at Trader Joe's that's, I don't like flavored coffees, but they have a coconut flavored one. It's pretty good. It's iced coffee.
The funny, I can't remember if we talked about it on here. The funny thing with the concentrates is I for a long time didn't know they were concentrates.
That's so bad.
And I just drank them straight. And then it was like, hey, you're supposed to mix that. I'm like, oh, okay. And I started mixing it. And I'm like, this is terrible. It's not.
I don't know. The only ones I've had that have been concentrated would be very, very strong. I like strong coffee, but it's almost intolerably strong.
Yeah, they have not been intolerably strong. But I do this thing all the time where I increase my caffeine intake, and I don't have a bad reaction. I can drink coffee and go to sleep.
Same.
But I like I've said it before, the companionship, but also the taste of it. But recently, at some point, I decided that I was going to do a double shot of espresso in my cold brew, and I haven't stopped doing that. and I was in Switzerland, and there was a Starbucks near my hotel, and I went in. And I was like, "Yeah, can I get a cold brew with a double shot?" And he goes, "Whoa!"
You're gonna die.
I'm like, coming from the country that they have espresso everywhere, and everywhere that I know, everywhere I went, people were just drinking espresso all day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, a cold brew with 2 shots of espresso replacing 8 shots of espresso. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
But,
No, I don't drink. I don't do drugs, unfortunately. So I really enjoy coffee. Like that's kind of my guilty pleasure, like after work on Friday on my way home, sometimes I'll stop and grab a coffee on my way home, and that's like to kick off the weekend. Or if I go for a ride on my way home, I'll grab an iced coffee, and I feel like you have the adrenaline going from riding. It was an intense workout, and you're coming home and like decompressing, and then you're like, no, you know what? Take some iced coffee. And it's like that's kind of my guilty pleasure. But yeah, I like strong coffee. I used to not be able to drink it. I remember in college, I guess I didn't drink that much coffee, but I drank like socially alcohol. So I don't know. I wouldn't drink as much coffee, but I remember getting Starbucks in college and not being able to finish it because it was so strong. I'm sweating everywhere right now. Like every part of my body is sweating. This is so intense.
I remember being in high school, and I would always get a French vanilla extra from Dunkin' Donuts. And I remember at one point, I don't know, I probably saw some kid drinking a black coffee. I'm like, is that nothing in it? And he's like, yeah, I just drink it black. I'm like, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I remember getting it, and I was so nervous to drink it, and I took a sip out of it when I got to school, and I was like, this is terrible. And I threw it away. And it wasn't until college that I started drinking black coffee, and then I don't think I've ever went back to like anything in it.
Yeah, I used to I'm going to put this baffle on my mic. I feel like I have my windows open. I can hear some wind noise. Maybe that's better. I used to, when I would drink coffee, I guess I would put like a creamer in it, a French vanilla creamer. But then that was like when I was going out and buying coffee from, I don't know, a Wawa or like a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. And then when I got a little bit older and started making my coffee at home and having like a reusable mug, I stopped putting sugar and cream in it because if it would get so gross by the end of the day. Like you'd finish it.
Yeah.
If it had cream or sugar in it, or you left it in your truck for a night, it would be curdled, and I feel like it completely just ruins the to-go mug. So I was like, I'll just start drinking it black. That was probably my early 20s, and I've been drinking black coffee since.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't really like if they put sweetener in my coffee, I'm bummed.
Oh,
like as a mistake.
I won't drink it.
Yeah, it's not good.
I went. Where was I? I feel like I definitely put it on my story. And I think I was supposed to go to a golf outing, and I picked up a coffee on my way. I don't know why that has nothing to do with the story. I picked up a coffee, and I go out to my truck, and I go to take a sip of it, and I immediately like, I don't spit it out, but I'm like, what the, like, that's not the familiar taste that I'm used to. And I look at it, and it was for Nikki.
Oh.
So I like read NIC, and I was like, that's mine, grabbed it and ran out. And I probably took like 3 sips. I'm like, I can't do this. And I drove to another Starbucks because I was like, I have to have a coffee.
Did you exchange it?
No.
I
was like 20 minutes away before I even took a sip of it, which is, I don't know why, but
I would rather, like Rachel, get lattes with no sweetener, and I would rather drink it with cream or milk than with sweetener. But still, it's not my go-to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I drink a fair amount of coffee, and probably doesn't help with anxiety, but I'm like, whatever.
Definitely not.
I keep enough stuff out of my life that I can that can be like my one bad thing.
It's I'm not. It's funny that every time we talk casually about stuff, it's always about coffee.
Yeah, I like
Like
coffee.
it's something that we always talk about. But I can't do like the afternoon coffees. I don't know why. As much as I love the taste, even if I just take a few sips of it, I feel like crap.
Really?
And yeah, it's just I don't know. It's all the time, and I get it wanting it, and I'm like, oh, I want that iced coffee. It's gonna taste so good, and I'll get one on my way home, and I'll take a few sips. I'm like, now I just kind of feel like crap.
The only time
Meanwhile, I
feel
grabbed the energy drink as I sat down.
the only time I don't like I feel gross after drinking coffee is if I drink coffee and then like in the afternoon if I were to drink coffee and then take a quick nap, I don't know why I wake up feeling like crap after that. But it's like, oh, I'm going to have an afternoon coffee. I'll drink a coffee and then still take a nap. A lot of times it happens when we're at Rachel's parents' lake house where you're just sitting around doing nothing. And I'll wake up and feel like dog poop right now.
Because like you didn't, probably because you didn't actually fall into a good sleep.
Yeah, probably.
But
I know some people hate on iced coffee. I like iced coffee. I mean, I'll drink hot black coffee too.
Me too. But it's different,
but I like
in my
both.
opinion.
Yeah.
Like I feel like drinking a hot cup of coffee. Like I want that like at a diner or just like chilling in a up in our place in New Hampshire. I'm just sitting like on the back deck watching the kids out in the backyard, just sipping a hot coffee when it's cool out.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be my like. I'm not going to seek out that. But an espresso I'll seek out, or a nice cold brew I'll seek out. But if I'm gonna, the only time I'm drinking a hot coffee is at home when it's like crappy out of a can or something.
Yeah, I drink hot coffee in the mornings just because we make it.
Yeah, that'd be different. I don't make coffee at home.
Is it really nice up there right now?
Yeah, it's actually really nice right now.
Yeah, it's been super
it was 100
nice
last week.
few days.
It was like 100 last week. When I got home, it was 75. Yeah, right now it's 75.
Yeah, we have like a breeze. It's been nice since like maybe last Friday, which is just it was so hot for so long and we got no rain. Then it cooled down, it rained, and it's been wonderful. And right now we have Selby at sleepaway camp. So like she goes to summer camp. The girls both go to summer camp almost all summer. It's like 7 or 8 weeks. Which is in our town. There's a YMCA that they own, I think like 800 acres. Out like in the Pine Barrens. So they have
That's cool.
Camping, swimming, boating, fishing, a ton of outdoor stuff. They do like archery. It's like an outdoors camp. But she's doing a week of sleepaway, which is in the same kind of compound, but it's like a different just girls camp. So she's there for the week, and Rachel's parents took Tilly yesterday with them to the lake for the week. So Rachel and I have no kids.
And Rachel's away?
Rachel went to New York for work today, but
she'll be back.
Yeah, she'll be back. So like last night we went out to dinner. I'm like, I feel like we should go out to dinner every night because
hell yeah,
like we just don't have this opportunity. It never had like you usually at least have one, or it's for like a night or two, or you go away. But I'm like, we have 5 nights in a row with no kids. We have to take advantage of this,
dude. You should be headed to New York.
I know. Well, I think we're gonna go out to a restaurant that she likes tomorrow. She got like in on a cancellation reservation. But no, we're just hanging because we're going away in 2 weeks from now.
Where are you going?
We're going up to Cape Cod.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I have actually. That's why I was late getting on the podcast. Well, you were late, and then I was late. So I was like, you know what? It's so nice out. I was like, I'm gonna go do an oil change on my bike real quickly. So I like was warming up my bike in the shop. And doing.
Wait, was that after I told you, hey, I'm gonna be late?
Yeah.
So just for everyone listening, I texted Tyler at 3:00 when we're supposed to start recording, saying, hey, I need a few minutes, and then I said I'm running extra late. He goes, that's fine. What time? works. I said 3:30. By this time, it's like 3:10.
Yeah.
So in 20 minutes, you decided to use that 20 minutes to do an oil change.
It was 3:07. So
Okay.
3:08. So I had 22 minutes.
That's a pretty quick oil change.
It is. It's easy. So like that bike, it's a 2-stroke. So it's basically gear oil and bottom end oil. There's like no screen or filter or anything. So it's just warming the bike up, draining the plug, pulling the plug and draining it and filling it back up. So it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's not the 4-strokes have like a couple of filters and it's actually lubricating all the valves and all that crap. So it's a little bit. I wouldn't try that with my other bike.
No, not for 22 minutes.
No. Yeah. So we're leaving that Sunday. I'm actually racing that Sunday, and then we're gonna leave when I get home from the race and head up. And then we're going to spend until Saturday. We'll leave Saturday because I believe Saturday or Sunday is Selby's birthday, leading into Labor Day weekend. And then we're going to spend Sunday and Monday at the lake house with her parents.
That's sick.
Yeah. What about you guys?
We're headed out of the country that weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sweet. For how long?
2 weeks.
Damn.
Yeah, we've been talking about for months, and it's been. I feel like I have a lot of shit going on.
Yeah,
and my head's absolutely been spinning. But yeah, we have been trying to book this this trip for months now, and last minute we were gonna go to Greece, or we are going to Greece. And one of our friends is going to be in France at the same time and asked us to come stop by, which is not really. This sounds ridiculous. And anyone that's listening, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to brag, but we were like, well, it does kind of make sense if they have a place for us to stay and we only have to fly up there. Let's just do that at the beginning or the end of our trip. So that's what but it's been a pain because we got to coordinate around that as well. And before that, we were super flexible. We were just like, hey, let's figure out 2 weeks where the flights make the most sense and we'll book it. And we finally just booked our flight to France. So, because
flying, like once you're in Europe is relatively easy and inexpensive from country to country, right?
I think so. I haven't actually booked the trip. I've only booked the flight to France.
I mean, I could be completely making that up, and my point of reference is actually quite a few years ago at this point. But I know when Rachel traveled abroad in college, she did like a ton of traveling from Germany, Switzerland, London, a bunch of different places that she wanted to go and see because they could basically book really inexpensive like puddle jumper flights from one country to another.
Yeah. So I know because when I flew home from Switzerland, it was Switzerland to London Heathrow, and I had to go through security again.
Yeah.
So it's not super easy, but I mean, I guess all in all, it's relatively simple. But from a cost, I didn't have that flight broken out, so I don't know. But
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, well, so let's dig into that for a minute. So just because, a lot of this podcast is about educational, this is something that for the last couple of months I've been paying a lot or spending a lot of time understanding and learning. We all run businesses. Most of the people that listen to this run businesses. And one thing that I didn't realize that I wasn't taking advantage of is the rewards and benefits of a credit card. And this entire trip will probably cost me out of pocket less than $1,000. And it's because I'm using all my points to be able to make this this trip happen. And I'm only mentioning that because I think that it's something that when we started deciding to travel, we were always paying for it. We'd save up and we'd go away. And the reality is that with a credit card and rewards, like now we put everything on credit cards. And I guess I have to state that this isn't financial advice.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I realized, and me and Meg and I realized that, hey, if we just put all of our purchases on a credit card, both from a business structure and a personal structure, we can just gain those points and figure out how to utilize them in a way that allows us to travel. And the whole point of it is so we're not, it doesn't cost us, it would cost us a ton of money to do this trip.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to afford it. And instead we're racking up the points in order to travel. So as a business owner, like I would absolutely recommend, digging into that, learning about it, and figuring out how to leverage, travel points and perks like that.
And are these points for multiple credit cards, or did you pick a specific credit card?
No, I have multiple.
And when you were applying for those credit cards, were you looking for like travel points?
Not at the time. So most of it's off the Amex Platinum. So in our industry, the Amex Platinum's good for like merchandise.
Yeah.
So you gain, like, we put all of our purchases on that. So everything that goes through the business is all done on the credit card. So lumber, materials, subscriptions, computers, as much as possible. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he goes, "Yeah, I just bought all my vehicles on the American Express Platinum too. That way, I get the points on those." And I was like, "But then you pay them back in full at the end of the month?" And he's like, "No, I just get a loan and then pay that credit card back with the loan."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh shit!" I'm like, "There's so many opportunities to just get like stack points up."
Yeah. So they would buy a car on credit card, take a loan out, pay the credit card down, and then pay the loan.
Yeah.
Smart.
It's super smart. And this, like I said, I'm learning about this stuff as I go, but it's so interesting how people leverage credit in efforts to, not only have buying power in their business, but then utilize the rewards on the back end for, trips, whether it's for business. I was in Switzerland. That cost me $0 out of pocket. And now I'm going to take my family to Greece and France. It's the same thing. It's $0 out of pocket. And the goal, so I started working with someone that kind of helped me navigate this. And the goal is to be able to, expand on that, be able to use these points not only to travel for personal, but for business, and then also dump it back into the business, reinvest in my people, reinvest in my business, reinvest in opportunities, whether that's, maybe sending one of my guys away, utilizing some of these points and not having it be this like massive expense to the bottom line of the company.
Yeah, because I have a couple of credit cards, business, personal, and they've just been like the credit cards that I've had for so long, and they were generic points cards where you get a certain amount of points back, and then every couple of months they'll have like 2-time points on this. But honestly, when I first enrolled for them, it was probably when I started my business, and it was like a free credit card. And maybe realistically, that probably isn't the best choice if I'm looking to kind of maximize that, and I'm not opposed to paying an annual fee on a credit card, assuming that you're recouping that. But like what my credit needs are now, obviously my credit line has grown, and what they'll loan me has grown, but like it's still the same point structure as I've been using for the past 12, 13 years. I've just never even thought to switch it. And honestly, most of it just dumps into Amazon and gets paid for with stuff that my wife ends up getting off Amazon. I'm pretty sure that that's like the least amount of leverage that you get for your points.
Yeah. And it's, again, beyond me, but I think it's worth mentioning that, there's opportunities here, especially being in business, having, purchasing so much, you should be benefiting from that. But I don't want to talk about credit cards. I want to talk about our industry, Tyler, and, education in our industry, something that you and I have committed to basically reshaping the Modern Craftsman around, education, the struggle, which is, the labor in this industry, the skills gap, and, when I was in Switzerland, there's a couple things. Just for the record, I've said it like 6 times. I was in Switzerland because Sega had invited me to come out and tour their facility.
Do they yodel in Switzerland?
They no, but they had that big horn.
Oh yeah, like the Ricola horn.
Yeah, you know Ricola is a candy over there.
Oh really?
And the only reason it's a quote unquote drug over here is because of the amount of herbs in it.
Oh really?
They pass it out. It's literally like bowls of candy.
And it's the same
thing.
Oh.
Hold on, I have it right here.
Who knew?
That
it's like is it good? Like it's not that good of a candy, right?
Here's my camera. There it is.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I mean, I ate enough to peel the lining out of my cheek.
Yeah, they yodel in Switzerland.
Well, I did not see any yodeling. So I was over there. We toured a bunch of job sites. We toured a bunch of their facility. We also toured a school for carpenters. Dude, we're so far behind, man.
Really?
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Millwork. Tyler, I didn't know they've been actually in business for over 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. So they've been making this fly ash material for a long time into all these custom profiles. And I was also on their website earlier because we were looking at some of the profiles for another job coming up, and I realized that they're a sponsor of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, and it reminded me of a project that we had in the South End of Boston where they denied my permit to use Boral or the True Exterior product on the outside of our roof line. They were very specific. You have to use this color slate. It has to match the neighborhood. And then I had put in a little note saying it was going to be all True Exterior, and we're going to have Duration make the custom profiles. And they're like, denied. And I was like, Keith,
composite.
It was like, I need help. And he goes, send them these pictures of the largest church right around the corner. Tell them that all of that is True Exterior. And the lovely lady wrote back and said, I'm so sorry. It's my first week here. And I saw the word that wasn't wood. So I just denied it.
It makes sense.
It totally. I get it. And listen, I'm a decent human being, and I didn't get mad. And she's like now educated on it and understands the benefit of using True Exterior over a wood product.
Yeah, I think that when you hear that word like composite, typically it's not necessarily aligning. You don't hear them side by side with historic preservation, but yeah, they can do pretty much anything that you want, mill anything that you want. The turnaround, the lead times are short. I know that they did mention they're going up a little bit, but still, compared for what you're getting and what they're able to do, it's insane how quick they can turn things around. So definitely hop on their website. You can reach out to them, and if you have anything, that you think they may be able to do or think they may not be able to do, shoot it over to them. Keith will get back to you very quickly and let you know. And I think that you'll be more than happy with the product.
And just for the record, guys, they have a bunch of partners with lumberyards all up the East Coast, but they will ship anywhere. This stuff, they'll ship it all. Like we've talked about the West Coast. So if you guys haven't been able to try it, because you're concerned of availability, now you know. DurationMillwork.com. Make sure you check them out on Instagram. This podcast is brought to you by Rockwell. You guys know what Rockwell is by now. Fire-resistant, soundproofing, stone wool insulation. And if you guys aren't part of the R-Class program, then you're going to want to be part of it, because this is the only place that you can be part of a community that's going to help you build better, and centered around better insulation details, better air sealing details. They have partnership. They work with manufacturers to make sure that they're not only promoting their product or promoting a stone wall insulation detail, but they're also working with other manufacturers and help you work through some complex details to make sure that you're building a better home. And, it is a community for those who take pride in their craft. Plus, you get a pretty sick swag box.
I was
You know,
thinking about. I was actually doing in that basement. I was doing a ton of fire blocking because we framed interior walls, like the floor and the ceiling. They were all framed out, and then we dropped a couple of ceilings. And there's some soffits, and I used rock wool for most of the fire blocking in there. There's like a ton of existing utilities, drain pipes. Were below grade, and I was using basically a bread knife, and I'm like, I could use the rock wool knife right now.
Mhm.
But their product, I do not enjoy fire blocking. It's not fun. It took way longer than I had anticipated and thought it would. But in hindsight, being able to use a product like theirs, not like a regular insulation, drywall, cement board, plywood, it made the job a lot easier. And then I'm also, so the insulators are coming tomorrow, and I actually have them soundproofing two of the utility closet walls where the furnace is, the hot water heater, and the HVAC, and the other one is a sump pump and a dehumidifier. So on those couple of closet walls, I'm having them, rather than standard insulation, install some rock wool to kind of cut down on the noise on there as well. Price point, amazing. Makes perfect sense to kind of upgrade there. It's not that much more, and I'm excited. It's going to be nice. Just like the customer's excited for me to even offer that option, where it's like, hey, I think this would be a little bit nicer here and keep it a little more quiet down there. And like his exact text was, I appreciate you making this as nice as possible. And it's essentially at the end of the day the same cost as getting it insulated.
Yeah, it's smart, and I mean, one of the nice things is they've actually ramped up their production too. So for a few months, everyone's like, "Where are you getting this stuff?" But if you head over to their Instagram, you see that stuff stacked high in the warehouse, and they're shipping it all over the place. But if you guys want to join that R-Class program, it is free. Rockwool.com/R-Class, and they'll be able to help you out with support and training by their team. And then you might even be able to win some free rock wool. But you have to check out the website for more information on that.
As far as like everything, the school.
Everything. The school, we are light years behind. The work over there, behind. The cleanliness and how polite people were, behind. Doug and I could not get over how clean the sidewalks and streets were all the time. All the time. And how nice everyone was all the time. And we flew
they're
home.
all hopped up on freaking Ricolas.
We got home and we got off the plane from Boston, like, whatever, it's 9:00 at night. And we're walking off the airplane and someone's like, "Hey, get in line!" And we're like, "Welcome back to Boston, man." And him and I were just like, why? But it's the skills and it's the skills gap, but it's also like the school. And the one thing I realized, and we're gonna post a video of this because we toured the school. Every kid there, or every student there, like really wanted to be there, like really, really wanted to be there. And and this is something that unfortunately, we had Travis from Catalyst a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and we lost his audio, which I was with him out there, but. And I told him, and he thought I was joking, and I felt really bad.
Yeah, that was well.
We started the conversation around education in elementary school, and I really thought about it, and these are the questions I asked out there. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing that's so wrong? And anyone that missed it, I also had the opportunity to interview Mike Rowe on Instagram Live, and he did say he would be on the Modern Craftsman, and I am going to follow up this week, and we are gonna get that scheduled.
Yeah, man.
Because that if you haven't seen it, I posted it on my feed. The interview was fast forward to like 20 minutes in because he got a new iPhone and he couldn't figure out how to turn it on and yada yada. But the conversation was around this whole topic and in how education is just part of it. And the reality is that, there's all of these little things that we as a society do to prevent kids from wanting to be in this industry. And he had said something about like trade school, that when a kid goes to trade school and then say they have metal fabrication, but then they get rid of metal fabrication, just the act of getting rid of that shop ingrains in that kid's mind that it is no longer a necessity.
Yeah. When
the reality is it is a necessity. And we're teaching them that it's not, because it's being removed from the school. And it's like the
school that you went to tour, was it strictly a carpentry school?
Strictly a carpentry school. Is 4 years. And
post high school? Or like, is this in place of high school?
I think it's in place of high, because they're like 15.
So it'd be going to like a vocational school. So
and you're asking, it sounds like you're going to ask similar questions that Ken asked today, and I was like, I didn't ask those questions. But in order for you to get into the school, you don't pay for it. It's fully funded by others, and one of the people funding it is you have to go get a 4-year contract job with a builder or someone that needs a carpenter. And you go to them and say, hey, I want to go to this school, and it's a 4-year program, and that employer will pay for that kid to go to that school. They also do fundraising, and there's like government assisted money going into it, but it's structured. And I'm talking, dude, they're learning at such a deep level and such a really methodical level that they're understanding the whole process. They're understanding the why. And one of the things that they do in their 4th year is this complex roof rafter mock-up. It's wild. When you, like, every single rafter is cut differently. There's a bastard hip, a valley. Like, they're beveling the valley, they're beveling the hip rafter, and it's all cut by hand. But before they even cut anything, they draw it on this big work table that they have in every view. Top down, from the side, isometric, and they're doing it because then they're going to use those drawings to then lay out their pieces by hand.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people do that where they're laying out a roof and they'll just lay it out on a piece of plywood, like full scale.
Yeah.
Or even just on like the decking. And then you can like, I think a lot of times that makes sense when you're figuring out like a ton of different fascia and cornice details and you want things to line up, where it's like, just start with the framing on paper, but like you don't have to scale that. You can do it full scale. But so is this program like based towards residential, commercial, neither, both?
Both.
Yeah.
Like basically how to be a good carpenter. Like they're learning they have a full-size building inside that they have everything on it. Skylights, roofs, different cladding materials, interior finish, drywall, plaster. Actually, I don't think they have drywall. Plaster, interior trim, exterior trim, windows, doors, everything. And it's
as far as like the trades are concerned over there, do you feel as though they're held in a higher regard than they are here?
Yes.
So you think that they probably make more money as well, like based on kind of a ratio of cost of living to what you're earning?
Yeah, I think I based on one of the business owners I talked to, they like the rates that they're paying they're good wages.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Mike had said is over there, it's not so much about blue collar, white collar. It's that everyone has a collar on. And it's not like and I think that again, that's another thing that I feel like the US, like, it's, you're either blue collar or white collar.
Yeah.
It's like, why does there have to be a difference? It's like, and I get the blue collar pride and I get that, but we're creating this divide where it's like you can only be one of two. And I forget who said it, but he had quoted this guy that was like, I'm going to sound like an idiot because I forget who it was, but it was, there was a politician on television that had said something about, we need. He was talking about a philosopher, and he basically, I'm paraphrasing, said, "We need more welders, not more philosophers." It's like, no, that's not the actual case here. We need people to be supported in either, like whatever they want to get.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of like,
Either
hey,
or.
we need to make sure that we get more carpenters or more people in the blue collar trades. We need to have, I don't want to say equality, but we need to, like, there needs to be equal amount of respect for both. Where it's like, they like it doesn't matter. Like if someone wants to be a philosopher, go do it, and there should be a massive amount of respect for it. But there should be equal amount of respect for someone that wants to go and be a welder.
It is. I do feel as though there is a pretty large and continually growing disparity between blue collar and white collar in our area. I mean, in our country in general, and I don't think there's much of an overlap. I think that they are independent of each other, and it is looked at as two different things. And you're choosing. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just shooting from the hip, but it does feel as though you're choosing that from such an early age, and that kind of disparity between the two is embedded within you at an early age, being you choose to go to college or you don't, right? And so, like, from being a little youth and adolescent on, you're taught that, hey, you need to choose one path or the other path, and they're going to kind of provide and sustain two completely different lifestyles. Which one do you want to choose? And I think for a long time, obviously, it was, you don't want to work with your hands. You don't want to be blue collar. You want to go to school, get an education. You don't want to have to work so hard. And I think that really kind of created this divide between the two. And I don't think that wasn't always the case. 100, 150 years ago, where you have carpenters and home builders, boat builders, they're sitting down at a table, sitting down at a bar, socializing in a small town with the doctors of that town, the lawyers of that town, the councilmen of that town. And obviously, there's exceptions to all of that. When you look at like the elite level of wealth in the country, I think that they're always going to be somewhat isolated. But fast forward 100 and 150 years, and I don't think that that's typically the case unless you're brought to the table based on, like kids. You have a common denominator there, where it's like kids on a sports team, and now you're socializing with people that you typically wouldn't. But I do think that there is a great divide between the two, and I think that that's kind of implanted and embedded in us at an early age.
Yeah, and the example you just gave is a perfect one, where they, you don't want to do that, or you don't want to be in the trades, you want to go get an education. And I think that's the most blatant like thing in front of us, that we can see and we can point our finger at. But the reality is, there's a lot of like little things that happen, whether it's taking the shop out of school and not saying anything about it, but then you get this like that kid that wanted to be a welder realizes, oh, maybe that job isn't needed. That's why they got rid of it in school. And, there's never a question as to why it actually disappeared. But it's also, like you said, at a very young age, there's all of these things that, are influenced on, children. The way the way their parents might speak to someone that is more blue collar. It's like, oh, they're ranking them in the society based on that, and the respect that they get. And it's at such a young age. And going back to what I said about Travis, like, Travis being in the elementary schools teaching building science and getting kids interested in it at such a young age, while that sounds trivial and silly right now, the reality is it's piquing their interest, and it's also making them realize that, hey, this is something that's kind of cool, and I could do this for work and make money, like, at a really young age.
Yeah, and I'm like, as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking this through in my head and thinking of what my upbringing was like and what my daughter's upbringing will be like. And I think that the kind of the notion that people have that there's a difference between the classes, that's not something that you're born with. My kids at this point don't understand that what I do for a living may be different than what some of their other friends' parents do for a living, and they don't understand. They don't have this notion that one is better, one is worth, one is more exclusive than the other. They see it at face value for what it is. And I recall that being the case as a little kid, and it wasn't until I got a little bit older, and I think that kids, your peers got a little bit older, and there was kind of a disparity between the classes, and I think that we've brought that on as a society as a whole ourselves, and I think that it is justified for kids. I came up in a pretty affluent town, and we were very cash poor, and it wasn't until I got to the age where I started seeing the privileges that other kids had that I noticed there was a difference. And I don't think that I attributed that just to my family as much as like, oh, my dad works with his hands. It wasn't just like, oh, our family doesn't have the money that a lot of the kids in this town do. It's our family doesn't because this is what we do for a living. And then looking to other kids in town from the other side of town whose parents were all blue collar and didn't work in an office and were doctors and attorneys, and the way that you were treated by them, the differences that they had, the houses that they had, the cars that they drove, it all supported kind of what's going through your head. And there was more things afforded to the people. And there's exceptions to this, but in the town that I grew up in as a whole, majority would say that the people who had the white collar parents were afforded more privileges and luxuries and had more than the families, that had one dad, a dad or a mom who worked, and a single parent, or, where both parents were blue collar, one parent was blue collar. And I think that it was just a matter of connecting those dots and seeing, hey, if you want to be like this, go to college. If you're fine with this and you're fine living in this house and doing this, then work with your hands. And it was definitely the case that if you worked with your hands, you would have a far less privileged life.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would say that our society just kind of accepts that and supported that, at least when I grew up 20, 25, 30 years ago.
But to expand on that, so I think I've said this before. There's an interest to be in the trades. There's an interest for people to learn this and want to be in it. And education is where we're lacking right now. But the unfortunate part of the interest is that there has been this notion that, hey, you can get in the trades and make a lot of money. You can make just as much as your doctor friends or your lawyer friends. You're not going to have the school, you're not going to have school debt. And those are all great examples. But the unfortunate thing, and this came up in the conversation with Mike, is that we're kind of telling a lie there, because the reality is you're not going to make $100,000 or six-figure salary right when you start out. You might, but the majority will not. And it's not that you don't have that opportunity, but you have to. But the realization is, and this goes with a lot of trades, but let's just stick to ours. The reality is that no, this is a hard trade. This is physically taxing. Like there's no doubt about that, and we got to stop. We have to stop sugarcoating that and saying, no, this is really great. This is a great trade. Like you can make a lot of money, and don't worry about it. Like you can come in and charge whatever you want, and you can put a big mark. No, you have to work. This is work. This is very hard work. And but that's okay. Like the point is not to say that this isn't hard work, because there's plenty of jobs that are not physically taxing. There's plenty of ways to make money. There's easier and easier ways to make money these days. But at the end of the day, if this is what you truly want to do, what we're trying to communicate is that the opportunity exists to create wealth. There's no doubt about it. Whatever trade you want to be in, there's people constantly in our comments saying, oh yeah, be a plumber, HVAC guy. Those guys make way more money. It's like, maybe they're charging more money because they're the scarcity, but you can make really great money. I know plenty of roofers that make really, really good money. I know builders that make really, really good money. I know plasterers that make really, really good money. Like I know guys that are in all of these trades, but the point is, it doesn't mean that they just got into it and it was easy. They've been busting their ass, and there's that physical tax that has always worked against them. Yeah. But beyond that, like we dug in with Isla, is like the whole investing side of it.
Exactly.
Where it's like, listen, like, yeah, you can trade time for money here and make a decent living, but if you want to create wealth, and this is where I think that, some of those kids that you were talking about with the white collar parents, like, yeah, maybe their salary was bigger, but they were oftentimes exposed to the opportunity to invest.
Correct.
They were in investments. They were in wealth management. They were hanging around with people that were in that. So they were like, oh yeah, you should invest in this, or you should invest in that. And they were taking the opportunity where for us, like, we're all sitting, people that are listening right now, it's like, yeah, but I don't have the time to learn that. I don't have, like, I'm working my ass off. I'm tired by the time I get home. I'm trading my 10 hours, a day for $30 an hour, or if that, right? Where it's like, that's understandable, and you're in the brunt of it right now, and yes, you can continue to climb, but there has to be that focus outside of that whole trade time for money aspect.
And that is a huge factor. And one of the things that I was thinking, when you go to work for somebody, no matter what level of white collar that is, for lack of a better term, typically when you're involved with a larger company, they're going to have the options for investment, pulling it directly from your paycheck. And it's almost not really an option. So it gets you started, and you look at a lot of the young men and women who get involved in the trades, and they're making decent money, but they're spending a lot of money as well. There's nobody there, they see what everyone else is doing, and they do that. And it's probably few and far between where there's a PM or an estimator or somebody within that company that sits them down and says, like, hey, I'm making X amount, but I'm also investing this amount on the side. And a lot of residential companies also don't have wealth management resources to be offering to their employees. So I think that it kind of perpetuates and magnifies like this disparity between classes, and it's gonna make it harder to kind of bridge that gap. And I think that there's a lot of people who have the blue collar mentality where they're like, this is who we are, we don't want to be that. And I respect that. That's great. But I think that we still have to have dignity, we have to have integrity, and we have to kind of create our own path and the way that people view us. And if we're these like hard-nosed individuals and this is the way we're going to be, and we're going to come out with dirty hands, and like, I get working hard for your money. I love it. I love what I do. I love the way I can provide for my family. But I don't want my kids to feel like they have a different upbringing because I work on people's homes or because I put a tool belt on. And my kids, like, there's always going to be people who make more money than you. There's always going to be people who make less money than you. But my kids will not have Like, they're not going to be raised like I was raised, where it was like, based on what you do, you are not as privileged as other people. So, like, in my head, I basically connected the dots that, hey, this is the lifestyle you'll have if you choose this path. And my kids won't know that. Like, one, my wife works. We have 2 incomes. She makes decent money. I make decent money. We provide a decent lifestyle and living for our family. And they won't, my kids won't differentiate between white collar, blue collar as far as what your financial return is there, because that's not something that I believe is the case. I think that no matter what you do, like you said, you can make money. It depends on how far you want to think outside the box, how far you want to push yourself, what type of responsibility you want, how you want to structure your business, all of that stuff. But I think that a lot of the issues lie in the fact that education, as far as hands-on education, but also the schooling and the kind of lack of structure as far as how you need to structure your lifestyle to be a successful human and contributing member of society. Most kids who go into the trades nowadays, myself included when I started, didn't have anyone telling them, put this much money aside for taxes, put this much into a Roth, put this much for your kids for education, touch base with this type of financial advisor. Like, that was just all stuff that you figured out on your own. And a lot of times what you're going to be putting towards taxes is figured out after the fact. Like, you're guessing for the whole year and then seeing what the difference is at the end of the year. And nobody's teaching you that stuff, where you go to college and you get a job with a big company and somebody's sitting you down and saying, like, hey, this is our wealth management options that we have. Where do you want to put your money? And somebody's structuring all of that for you. And I think that really helps these people out long term. With us, like, a lot of small companies don't offer that.
No, and I think that, as you're sitting here talking about it, it's like, man, it would just be awesome to have some sort of playbook. It's like, if there was just a simple playbook that's, you could be like, hey, you're starting out your own company. Here's the things that you could do right now to start setting you up to build wealth along the way. And you and I aren't going to be the people that can necessarily navigate that, but it's a conversation that I think has to be had, especially, to help encourage people that are in these trades. Because if they don't see the path, or they don't see that, like, quote unquote light at the end of the tunnel, like, that's why they end up leaving the trade. And I've had that firsthand, where I haven't given a clear enough path for someone at at my company, so they're like, I'm not really sure where I stand or how I grow, and without or beyond just like, hey, you gave me a raise, or you gave me this, like, what's my actual path? Like, how do I become a carpenter, a lead, a super, an assistant PM, a PM? How do I become a senior super? Like, without that path and without that understanding of growth, unless that person's okay with just kind of plateauing or being stagnant, they're gonna leave.
Yeah.
And whether it's the company or the industry, it's an issue either way.
Even if you look at, right, say you go to college and you go to get a job working for an accountant, an accounting firm, or you're interviewing for positions, like, you're going to look at salary and you're also going to look at benefit package. Mm-hmm. Imagine if that were the case and a standard for a construction company, where it's like, you have to offer this base level of healthcare or investment opportunities for people in order to be a business in residential construction, right? Because now people are not adopting that, because it's getting them in the door with either higher profit margins, or they're able to offer a lower price because they don't have to bear that overhead. Now think if that's a standard across the board and you go to hire somebody, like that's just part of the price, right? Like when you go to buy a pair of shoes from Nike, part of the cost of those shoes are because the overhead and how they take care of their employees and everything that goes into that. It's not like Nike's like, well, listen, we're gonna pull our employee benefits to be able to drop the shoe cost by $2.50. Like that's just not an option. It almost sounds ludicrous to listen to it, but like that's every single day in our industry.
I think that you hit the nail on the head with like quick to a higher profit or a lower cost, and that's the whole race to the bottom side of it. But the higher profit, that's the quick return. Yep. It's like, how do I make as much money as I can as fast as I can? And you hear about these uber successful companies. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're making a lot of money, but they're also they have also invested an enormous amount of time and oftentimes money into setting it up, and without people they wouldn't be a company. And I think that your strategy of saying like, hey, in order for you to be in business, you need to have this baseline program. And I'm sure a lot of people are listening like, I can't even afford to pay myself right now. And it's like, that's a very real thing in this industry. And I'm going to say something that sounds like, probably ridiculous. And it's like, oh yeah, well, you can say that, it's easy for you to say that. But the reality is the sooner you put it into place, the sooner you quote unquote figure it out, as my dad would say.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for years, I didn't pay myself a salary. And when I hired my CFO, that was the first thing she said. She goes, you need to be paying yourself a salary. What do you want to make a year? And we had a conversation, and I threw out a big number at the time. She's like, done. I'm like, no, I can't afford that. She goes, you're going to figure out how to afford it.
Yeah.
And then it was health insurance. And I remember upping that health insurance, and I flipped the script on her, and she goes, why did you up it? She goes, we can't afford to increase our coverage. I'm like, then we need to figure out how to afford it. And it's when you put that constraint on you, it's like, sure, that might hurt your profit line. Maybe you're not profitable this month or this year or whatever it is. But the reality is these are the things that you need to put in place to create a good buzzword culture for people to be part of. And hopefully stick around, not just because of that. That's the part. That's a perk of working there. It's that you're a decent company, a decent human being for having the right things in place to take care of your people. But it's deeper than that.
I mean, you look at even commercial construction and union where they require healthcare, and they're going to offer healthcare, right? And that's just built into the cost of their projects. It's a non-negotiable, and they're not going to offer you that health care the first week, you have a trial period there. But if just like general liability insurance, just like workers' compensation insurance, if there was a requirement that your employees had health care, that they could either forego by signing up with somebody else, could get a stipend, whatever that may be. But if that were just a standard across our industry, everyone would have to bear that overhead, so the cost of work would go up, and that would just be the cost of doing work. And I think that right now, like, it's so low and it's not highly valued, and it is a race to the bottom because everyone's just trying to squeak in with whatever money they can save. And if it's by not offering healthcare, by not offering a stipend, whatever that may be, if that were a standard, there wouldn't really be there'd be no conversation about it. That'd just be the cost of business, just like general liability insurance is the cost of business.
All right, so this is where I'm going to fight back on, like, it doesn't have to make the work more expensive. And this is what I mean by that, is that and this is a big, like, especially looking at the way they do it in Switzerland, and and they have 2-week vacation or holiday, as they call it. They shut down. Everyone shuts down in August for 2 weeks. their breaks are, everyone's taking a nice casual break. Lunch, I've never seen such a hearty lunch, and everyone sits down and
just eats
has
Ricolas.
lunch. I mean, like steak for lunch, and and then when they're working, no one's running around running around with their head like a chicken with their head cut off. They're working like decent human beings and smart and thinking about things. So this, yes, all of these things are in place. Benefits package, they have all these, or let's talk about us. Like, we put all these things into place to offer a better place for our team to work and have a career and grow. It's like, well, all of those are additional costs, and I have to charge more for my work. It's like, sure, but if your people are happier, and your people are here for the longevity, and they're part of something that is bigger, couldn't you use the equity that you have in those people, right? The emotional equity, into figuring out how to be more efficient, how to do their work more efficiently, how to rethink about the way we're building. And this is, again, it's like, I'm looking at the way we're building here versus the way they're building there, and I'm walking past jobs, thinking about past jobs, looking at current jobs, and constantly auditing the way we're doing things, and question, like, there's got to be a better way to do this. We have to be able to use less material. What could we have done, to do this differently? And your example of, hey, we'll just get rid of these benefits and then we can be less expensive. It's the same thing when I task my team with, hey, this is the budget, and the end result. And this is a big mistake I've made recently, being as a leader, is that I've pushed too hard for recommendations of, for an exact example is product. And I had sat down there like, hey, what are we thinking we're going to use this? It's not specified. I'm like, hey, use this product. Great. They price it. It's enormously expensive. And then they're like, we got to talk to the client about, the budget being over, that line item being over budget. I'm like, well, what are our other options? And they're like, what do you mean? You told us what product to use. I'm like, that's my mistake. That was a suggestion. Is there other products we can use that are less expensive and get the job done? Yeah, of course. I'm like, all right, let's play this scenario in our head, right? You go up to the client and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your line item tripled because Nick over here decided to use a more expensive product, so you owe us more money. That doesn't you can't have that conversation. And it's the same thing where it's like, you can't just go to the client and be like, hey, we're going to be more money because we offer better benefits than everyone else. It's like, no, you gotta look internally and think about, hey, if you have a better system, a better team, better culture, and better people on your team, then work together and figure out how to be more effective as a building contractor.
And I agree with that, but I do believe that a lot of those costs should not be kind of absorbed by the owner of this company, right? Like, you're a small
I would
company,
agree with
and
that.
you want to say you have 3 employees and you want to offer healthcare for them, and you're sorting it. It's a big step for you. It's a lot of money. You should be looking for ways to absorb that cost into the business, which is then transferred to your customers, because your customer, like, you're providing a service to your customers, and if it's improving company morale, if it's creating efficiencies within the work, amazing. Like, you can kind of alter your pricing, but I don't want people to think, oh yeah, you need to pick up health insurance. That's just going to be less that you're making. Like, there are ways to kind of absorb those costs into business, but at the end of the day, if you're in a service industry, as an employer, you should be figuring out ways for that to be built into the cost of running your business, and whoever is, hiring you for your services should be the one who's paying for that in one way or another. It's just like if anything that you want, you go out to eat, like I don't want the chef of that restaurant picking up the cost of employees within that restaurant when it's like I'm a patron of that restaurant. I'm paying for the service, I'm paying for the employees, I'm paying for the food, and I'm paying for the profit and everything else. And if I'm not happy with it, I can go to the restaurant next door that's less money. But if I like their service and I like their product, I should be okay with paying whatever that cost is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you're expanding on kind of what we're both talking about. And someone once said it to me, and the simplest way I've kind of looked at it is that anything that's required to get that job done, like you're thinking, like let's just talk as a builder or contractor. If you need a particular thing to get that job done, then that cost is a job cost, and that should be billed to the client. And
correct, like a 2x4, a piece of drywall.
Right, everyone knows that, right? Material and time, they know that. But what about liability insurance? We brought that up earlier. Liability insurance, you're required to pay X amount to be in business, just to be in business, right? There's a minimum threshold. But at the end of the year, you do X amount of work, $1 million worth of work. Your insurance company comes and audits you and says, hey, you did $1 million in sales. You owe us more money. It's like, well, if I had done 800,000, would I have paid less? Well, yeah, of course. Okay, what's that multiplier? Well, it's about 1.2% of your sales. Great. So for every job I sell, I need to add 1.2% to that job somewhere for liability insurance. And if that ever got questioned by a client, for example, it's like, well, the only reason I'm paying 1.2% towards the insurance is because of this job.
Correct.
This insurance is for this job. Same thing with Procore or Buildertrend or project management software. The client has access to that, and we pay a healthy amount every year to that program. And if we did not have any projects, we would not have that program.
Yeah.
So the only reason we have it is for these projects. So that is a job cost. Now, yes, let me back up. The labor burden, I think this is something I talk a lot about in a lot of my calls with like the consulting calls I do. And we always talk about the labor burden. And oftentimes I find that people don't fully understand what the labor burden is or how to calculate it. And it's something that, big picture, you pay someone $20 an hour. For those that are listening, you're paying someone $20 an hour. That person probably costs you at least $35, maybe $40 an hour. And in a real quick, jot down, $20 an hour is their base rate. Well, you have Social Security, you have payroll taxes, you have workman's comp because of that person. You're paying a little bit of general liability on that person. Do they have a company vehicle? Do you give them a gas card, a cell phone? Here's one that people oftentimes forget. Do they have vacation time?
Yeah.
If they have vacation time, they're going to likely take the 2 weeks vacation. That is a cost. So that has to be rolled into ultimately what they're making, what it costs you per year for that person. And then you back that out and realize, hey, that $20 an hour actually cost me $32 an hour. So you got to be billing out at least $32 an hour, hopefully more, in order just to cover the cost.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like if they have health insurance or all of these perks that we're talking about, yes, they need to be flipped back onto the client, and the client needs to be paying for it in order for you to be in business to make a profit. And despite all of the passion that you do this for, you are in business to be a profitable business. That is how you put food on your table. If you're not a profitable business, you have to, I want to say this out loud, is that you are stealing from your family in order for everyone else to eat. That is actually what you're doing. You're robbing your family of time, and you're robbing your family of money. And that sounds aggressive, but it's very true. You are taking the finances, instead of you getting paid an adequate salary, you're making sure everyone else gets paid, and that the client gets something likely for free. Now, how does this relate back to what I said a couple minutes ago? Yes, all of that's true. The client needs to be paying for it, but we, I think, as a society in the U.S., as builders, we have become so accustomed to the way that we build, and we have just become not completely, but we have become oftentimes very wasteful in the way we build. I look at these panelization factories. I see the way things are coming together on site with, pre-manufacturing parts and pieces, and the lack of waste that is a byproduct of that. Where it's like, I toured a factory that all they do is completely panelize everything to build homes, multifamily homes, and every single piece of wood that gets cut, if it's small enough, it goes in the dust collector, and 85% of the dust they create heats the entire facility, every building on the property, every building. And then the other 15%, I'm not sure if they sell it or I'm not sure what they do with it, to be honest. And same thing, I had asked about the plastic. They wrap all these panels with plastic. All that plastic gets collected, recycled. But the point is, and same thing with gypsum, actually, they collect all that and recycle it. But the point is that we've become so wasteful in building around here. In the panelization, this isn't a panelization talk, but the point is that with a good team and with the right support behind your team, this is where we get to start questioning and thinking about how we can do something differently. How can we improve our process? How can we get the same result or better by doing it differently? And ultimately, we want to become more efficient. We want to become more effective. We want to become, we want to continue to make more profit, but we should be continuing to make more profit, but also thinking about how we can bring our costs down, make it more obtainable by more people. If we can figure out ways to cut our costs, but still deliver a great product, that's a win-win.
Yeah, obviously, the hardest part about all of this is that it's not necessarily one thing that kind of has brought us here. It's been 100 years of things compounding, and peaks and valleys of our industry, and people getting strapped, and then looking for ways to kind of bring their pricing down. And I think that over the years, all of those things have just become standard. And when the economy turns or there's a shift in our industry, there's just too many small companies that continue to go down this road, kind of singing their own tune, following their own rules, blazing their own trail. And there's no playbook, there's no standard, there's, even from state to state as far as licensing goes, and the testing, there's no federal requirements for any of this stuff within our country. And I think that that's what makes it really hard. And I think that what the electrical and plumbing companies have going for them are the barriers to entry and the constraints and the validation and the licensing, and the legitimacy that they are able to charge more money for what they're doing because of that. And I think, I had an inspector at one point tell me where, this would be an as-built. If it were a plumber or electrician, I'd just have them stamp a drawing and submit it to me because there's liability there. They have stake in this because if they get their license pulled, they cannot be in business. They cannot get a new license for that company. They can't change the name of their company and use the same license number. But then he's like, for you could close up shop and start a new company and there's no recourse for you. So I can't have you sign off on something. I can't have you send photos of something. I can't take your word for it because realistically, your word means nothing in New Jersey when all I have is a license with the Division of Consumer Affairs that I could file for another one and pay $70 a year,
right,
start an LLC and have a business again tomorrow. So I think that there has to be some standards put in place. I think that customers and clients have to bear the brunt of that. I think that, a lot of them don't value what we do because there's always somebody there who's going to do it for less. There's no bottom line. Like there's always a lower price. And you look at most other industries, whether it's the food industry, whether it is the auto industry, and like people know what they're getting and understand, like, yeah, a Kia isn't a Ferrari. Like people understand that, but within our industry they don't. Like there's no discrepancy between what you do and what, somebody who just started a business or works by themselves do. They don't understand that there's a lot of levels to this and that there's ways to do that right on every level. And I think that until our customers understand the cost of doing business and we're all on the same page as far as what we need to charge to do that, it's going to be very hard. I think that, education obviously plays a huge role in this. And I think setting some standards of being in business on a federal level would help us out so much. Because right now it's like the wild, wild west, man. From one state to another, you do whatever the heck you want. Even as far as, building code goes, it's township to township as to how they want to interpret the International Building Code, what they want to adopt, what they want to enforce. There's just no standard.
No, and I do think that all of this really does come back to creating respect in what we do. And, there's a lot of ways to do that. And, bridging the gap between white collar, blue collar, correcting the way we educate our children, about this industry, about the opportunities in this industry, educating our client, and further educating our client, where it's like, yeah, you're right. There's people that still will make the conscious decision to risk working with someone that is less expensive, knowing that they might not have their shit together. But it's like, I feel like I'm a pretty savvy homeowner. I can probably work with them and fill in the gaps that they might have, and they might do it. But at the end of the day, it's like, I've said it before, is that I don't want my trades working for me because I beat up and after I beat up their number.
Yeah.
It's because I'm not doing them any service. I'm pummeling them for their best price. Give me your best price. Give me your best price. And it's like, on one hand, it's like, well, you're looking out for your homeowner. It's like, my homeowner decided to build a house. That guy that's doing the tile or the plaster or the plumbing, he didn't decide to come over and do the plumbing in this house. He's doing it to support his family.
Yeah.
So for me to tell him I need his best price so I can give the client a bigger house, that's not a fair trade, and that is creating rank in who's important in that relationship. Putting the client at the absolute top, and then putting the subcontractor or the trade at the bottom. And that's an issue that, as builders and general contractors and renovation contractors, that's our role. That's where we're screwing up. We are not creating equal respect between the homeowner and the trade performing the work. And ultimately, when that home's done and maybe the market doesn't do so hot, they probably will still own that home, and the trade's going to be out of work because he didn't have any money put away because he couldn't afford to save his money.
Yeah.
He was working for such a low margin that he was not prepared financially. And that, as much as we could say it's his fault, it's us as the builder, as a general contractor, for pushing him to do it at that rate because we wanted to give our client a bigger house.
It is, and it's also what we are selling and why we are selling that. And you'd have to question, if if you are able to sell what you do because of what the market looks like right now or where you are, every geographic location, every demographic is different. And I think, you can't put a blanket over this entire industry. But I think that a lot of it's what we are selling as well. And I think having that conversation with customers, I just had a conversation with a customer recently where they're like, I can't believe it's this much for this. And it's the conversation where it's like, this is how I operate as a business. I don't have a ton of employees that I'm throwing at the job. The subs that I use are not going to be inexpensive. We're doing a higher level of management, obviously all the things that we are selling, that I'm selling, and that's not just for me, that's to help kind of lift our industry and create a standard that's higher than what that standard is. I just had a customer this morning email me about decisions for some cabinets, and like the difference between a plywood top with a nosing that's 3 inches thick and slabs that are 3 inches thick, and like X amount of money seems like a lot for 2 slabs. And I'm like, I don't get upset about it, but I'm like, there's a big difference between the two. And if you don't, like, I can't say what's expensive and what's not, because if that's something that you value in this investment in your home, and it's a night and day difference between the two, like, who's to say? You're the only one that can say whether that's expensive or not. I can't. It's not my money. Based on what we want to do, I know what I'd rather see there, but I can't say what's expensive and what's not, because what I want to do as a contractor, I don't want to sell something just because it's more money. I want to sell something that allows me to do the job the right way and not feel rushed, and to be able to clean up and to set my subs up for success and to be able to manage subs and ensure that the job is progressing as it needs to. And there's a cost associated with that, but I think that if there were some sort of a base level standard that was higher than kind of what the base level is right now, because I don't believe there is a base level right now. I think that whatever that base level for most contractors are, it's always able to go lower, because they'll do that for customers. They'll shop that sub, they'll substitute these materials. And that's just to keep customers happy, and everyone's going to ask if you could do it for less. That's just in our nature. But our industry has done a very terrible job of kind of letting that be the norm. Where other industries, healthcare industry, you're not going into your doctor and being like, listen, your knee surgery costs $15,000, but I interviewed another doctor and he said he did it for $12. Do you think we can meet in the middle? Like, you don't do that at a restaurant. And I think that like that has just become the norm in our industry. I don't know why, but I think that's one thing that needs to change. There's so many things that need to change, but I do believe, as far as the education goes, there's the hands-on training that's huge. There's getting these young men and women into actual classroom settings or job site settings to learn the practical materials and methods of construction, whatever discipline that may be. But I also think the education needs to be on finances. It needs to be on healthcare. It needs to be of what kind of the bottom line should be for running a business, marketing, what all of that stuff looks like. It shouldn't be any different than any white collar profession, what we do. And I think that, having kind of a rule book for that and creating a community where people can sign up and understand what that looks like, and kind of, as Instagram was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where everyone's getting on there and kind of raising the tide rather than, bickering back and forth.
Mhm.
And then, obviously a bunch of vendor money got dumped into it too. And it's a marketing platform. But I think having somewhere for people to go to say, hey, these are the standards within our industry. This is what this should look like. And it can't be a blanket coverage of the entire industry. But I think that having some sort of basis for everyone would really help us as a whole, as a country. Just having some standards. Like I obviously didn't go to Switzerland with you, but it seems as though the entire country is kind of under the same system, and
Mhm.
it's not, a couple million people doing their own thing and playing by their own rule book.
Right. And that's it, and that was evident in everything. I mean, all the way to the cab driver. He picked us up and there was this huge like traffic thing, traffic jam, and he showed up and he was like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "It's all good. We got time. We're just headed to the airport." He goes, "No." He's like, "You're in Switzerland. Everyone is always on time. And I'm not today." And I'm like, honestly, totally fine. We're from the United States.
Yeah.
But it was everyone. You're absolutely right. Like everyone had that same mentality. It's like, no, we're here to do our job. We respect what we're doing. We want to be the best at what we're doing, and I don't know, maybe there's parts of me that felt like I was wearing rose-colored glasses out there, but I do truly feel like we have so much to learn from them, and I'm bummed that you weren't there to take it in. But I started this podcast, or we started this podcast today talking about like the industry and where we need to improve, and we've mentioned it before, but that's truly what Tyler and I have been talking for the last few months about, is like really shaping this into, there's going to always be these conversations that we have today. It's just Tyler and I. Oftentimes we have a guest that can shed light on something that, we're not up to speed on, but we really want to start flipping this conversation back to everyone that's listening. And you guys have been great with the iTunes reviews. You've been great with the reshares on Instagram, but I would love to really open up real honest conversations about why you think this industry is lacking the things it needs and what it's lacking. Because it would be the only way we can help improve it is to really shed light on the issues. And the issues we know are labor. We know that we're lacking skilled trades. We understand that people are retiring and the people that are replacing them aren't qualified because there's lack of education. But let's talk about that in more depth and talk about solutions and how we can actually bring solutions to the table and start picking away at it.
Yeah, and I think that obviously we're looking with the podcast and what we're doing to really create a community of people, and that's always been the goal. And we've had some changes over the past year that we're looking to work through. But I think the long-term goal is to provide an area, a platform, a forum for people to kind of get together and put our heads together to kind of elevate the entire industry. And like, obviously there's a long way to get there and there's many levels of things that we have to do. But I think one big thing would be figuring out what would make your lives easier as a business owner, as an employee working for someone within the industry. I love the whole blue collar loyalty and, dirty hands, clean money. But to me, that is, it's really polarizing. And I think that it is widening the gap between classes. And I don't think that that's the answer. Like, I think that we should be closer to one. There shouldn't be a difference between what I do, what Nick does, and what the attorney around the corner does. We're all if everyone there owns a business, it shouldn't be that much different. Maybe some people can charge a higher rate, but the respect, the dignity, the integrity, I think that should all be the same. And I think there's definitely things that we need to put in place as an industry to ensure we're moving towards that direction and not kind of stepping away from that. And I think that everyone who listens to this is in a different area of the country, of the world, and has their own unique challenges. But I also believe that we also have a lot of similar challenges that are not exclusive to each and every one of us. So I think that kind of finding out what the challenges are, those mutual challenges that we all share, and being able to kind of speak to them or get guests on, or create, a platform where people can start putting our heads together and solving those problems, the ones that we all experience and that really prevent us from getting to where we want to be or just slow us down.
Yeah. So let's figure out a form. I think, why don't we stick to iTunes, and hop over there. Obviously, drop us a review. Let us know how we're doing. But in the comment section, leave us a little nugget of your take on where we stand or where your market stands with the industry, and what what could be the number one thing that could really help, grow your specific market.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's something that you want to follow up with an email,
oh yeah, great.
That you feel like requires a little more breath, not quite as short and to the point, follow up with an email. If it's something that you want to hop on the podcast for and kind of discuss, if you want to hop on a phone call and talk about that, then Nick and I can kind of elaborate on that on a larger level and kind of dig into it, maybe talk to some people, and then circle back a week or two later with some viable options or answers. I think that would be great too. But anywhere that you can share this, hop on iTunes, follow up with an email, get us as much information as possible. What would make your life easier? What are the struggles that you face? That it's something that we can tackle and find answers to, I think would be great, so that we can kind of help give back to you guys. You can help us raise these tides, and kind of move in the direction that we need to, because I think that at the end of the day, we all need to band together. We are all on the same team, and there's not a lot of us right now. And I think that for the future, to be able to sustain what we're doing, I think that we all kind of need to band together and bring each other up, rather, and be inclusive of everyone, rather than kind of separate and isolate ourselves.
Yeah, so if you guys want to shoot us an email, Tyler, I think that's a great idea. info@themoderncraftsman.org. And like you said, we'll read through it, and maybe we'll have you on the podcast and we can discuss, because that is really, we want to continue to really focus on bettering this industry, and the only way we can better it is by creating the equal respect and the education.
Yeah, and a lot of times our guests who have been in business for a really long time, and they've kind of worked their way through those hiccups, and they're in different areas of the world. Maybe they're in a more affluent area. Maybe it's an area where customers are more prone and willing to spend money, and we want to definitely talk to you men and women, guys and girls, who don't have the same experience that we do, and don't, necessarily, the problems and the struggles may have a lot of similarities, but we'd like to try and, have a more level playing field for everyone, so that everyone can sustain and provide for their families and create one big community, rather than all of these separate tiny little companies and independent contractors where just everyone's making this shit up as they go. I think that kind of having a standard set of rules and principles and kind of a basis for everything would be huge.
With that being said, guys, big thanks to our sponsors, Duration Molding and Millwork and Rockwell. We'll talk to you guys next week. Oh, I was going to say we forgot to do the intro, but we... Yeah, why don't you do the intro this time?
Me?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Tyler Grace.
Hey guys, I'm Tyler Grace. Today I am on the Modern Craftsman podcast with my co-host Nick Schiffer. It's just the two of us today. We start the podcast off with a little bit of coffee talk. How beautiful the weather is outside. I had to put a separate little buffer on my microphone because I have the windows open. I'm getting a nice breeze coming through.
Becoming old men, Tyler.
I know. But a bunch of people have been requesting of us, just the two of us hop on. We've had guests lined up, one right after another for so long now, and we had a last minute cancellation. Nick was looking to fill somebody in, as he always does, and I was like, you know what? Let's use this as an opportunity to kind of hop on. I guess Nick had something in mind that he wanted to talk about. I was looking to talk more so about dirt bikes and vacation and how nice the weather was, but Nick wanted to dig into some interesting stuff that he learned on his trip recently to Switzerland. So I personally enjoy these podcasts a lot. It's a little less formal. We don't have a guest that we have to kind of pull along and answer the questions and do the interviewing. So it's shoulders down, very informal. And we start digging into some things, and we really would like the help of you guys and girls via email, iTunes, whatever it may be. You'll hear at the end of this podcast, but we're enlisting the help of you guys to kind of help this industry as a whole. Some ideas that we have, and I think that pretty much sums it up. Right?
Amazing intro.
Yeah.
It's like you've done this before.
I think I have once or twice. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Obviously, follow up if you like this structure. We can try and work more of these in. It's been crazy lining people up and having guests on. And sometimes we kind of forget about going back to grassroots and doing what we first started doing. But I always feel like these are refreshing. I enjoy them. Hopefully you guys do. And you can let us know what you think. Thanks. Sponsors?